Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Man to Man Voices and Stories. And this is uh, Taming That Inferno, a man's guide with Greg Wanberg. Today, we're going to talk about what it's like to go from out of control fire to controlled burn and having a direction and a meaningful purpose in life with author, social media influencer, Greg Wanberg. And we'll be here in just a second. So stay tuned in just a moment. All right, everybody. This morning we have a co-host today, Greg Wanberg. Good morning, sir. How are you doing? Let's get this going. What's
Yeah,
going
let's
on?
freaking go, man. I'm excited to be here, Jason. It's good to see your face too.
Yeah, we got connected with a really great guy, Dominic Demansky, and I've known Dominic for over a year now, and he's a publisher, and matter of fact, you're a publisher, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I actually I just completed a few more action items for him this morning right before we did this. So,
Nice, nice. And what's going to be the title of your book?
title of the book is In Need of Heroes: A Father's Battle from Pain to Purpose.
Ooh, okay. And can you give us a sneak peek at what that's going to be about, or what's it encompassing and what it means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, who I am now as a man and where I came from, they're like the extremes of the like success, victory, like suffering, torment
Mm,
spectrum. So along the way, I've spent 2 decades mentoring people, coaching people. I have an education in human services, so I studied psychology and counseling and therapy and those disciplines. I have a lot of experience with the mental health industry as being a practitioner and also on the clinical side. And I'm convinced that the mental health industry is failing fathers
mm,
woefully. From my own experience and from what I've seen and just knowing how God created men, there's a significant component that's missing. And so this book is one part academic, one part autobiographical, and then one part self-help. So I'm taking from all of the pain and the torment, which we can get into some of those details, like being suicidal as a 7-year-old and attempting suicide at 16, through addiction, through depression, through anxiety, even through what could have been a bipolar diagnosis, into being a leader in the community, being an inspiration to other fathers, being a man whose wife and whose children have an incredible life because of my choices and my actions. And just, it's a story of that journey and how I made it real for the people that I love the most so that other dads could do the same.
and do you feel that, the message to males to become men is very disorient? I feel it is. I feel that what maybe mainstream society here in the United States, especially, I can't speak for the world because I've only limitedly gone overseas. But what I would say is here, the message of what a man is and what a father is, way just there's a lot of blurred lines, and the identity of what we need to do to become each is
Yeah.
very blurred. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I've traveled the world too. I did work in India, I've done work in Ukraine, I've done work over the US. And like the things that humans struggle with are pretty common. However, here in America, it's like we just we're not getting it right. Right. We have a lot of guys that are macho and they're brave, and we have a lot of guys that understand stoicism and virtue, and we have a lot of other guys that understand empathy and compassion and emotion and vulnerability. We don't have a lot of people that are doing a good job at putting all of this together. We don't not have societal standards and expectations where all of that is combined. And it's just like, I mean, mix in this whole thing of where now gender is something that's fluid and can be determined moment to moment, like whim to whim. we have no fucking clue what it means to be a man anymore. We have completely lost our way.
And this is so interesting. I don't know if you've heard this, and this is kind of like a question I didn't put in our brief. But did you hear the quandary that was put out in social media a while ago? Man, what would a woman rather face, a man in the woods or a bear in the woods? Have you ever heard that? I don't. Okay, so in social
I
media,
imagine I imagine that the women that answered this had never really been around a real good man and had never actually been around a bear either. So,
well, interesting you say that because matter of fact, somebody had taped a woman walking on a trail and there were two bears, a mama bear and a papa bear, and they're walking down the street. But their story is that it would be safer to face because a man is so very dangerous. It was a metaphor argument, and it's just like that right there told me so much just in today's mindset. And there are women complaining that they cannot find trust in man. And I'm going to be really transparent. Look, I have lied as a man to a woman. I've done it.
mhm.
I can't say that I never did. Men don't always stay liars. They end up maturing and they elevate if they want to.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
Yep.
So, do you feel that there's a difference between a male and a man?
Yeah, 100%. I do. Yeah, I do.
And what would be your what do you think the differences are in a male versus a man?
I love that we're coming out with this question right out of the gate because when you and I spoke on the phone last week, I felt like this was a really good question. And I remember the answer that I gave you was it was a man whose life is marked by a duty for somebody else, right? A
Mhm.
man who is going to carry a burden and a sense of urgency for a purpose for somebody else and who's going to let his time and his day-to-day life and his intentions be shaped by this sense of duty. The more I thought about it, the more BS I
I'm
could just
glad I got it
smell.
to
Like
you.
the more I actually, like, on the surface, that's a pretty damn good answer, right? Like a man is somebody whose life is marked by duty.
Yeah.
I think that this is innately true for men. I don't think that that is what is at the heart of a man, especially, and we're talking about like the separation between just being a male versus actually being a man. And so I actually took some time and I'm pondering this, right? And then I'm looking at my own life. I'm looking at where I was and as a child and as a teenager and the incredible man that I've become. And some people might think that that's pompous or not humble for me to say about myself. Look, humility is the truth. The truth is I'm a badass dad. Like, I am an incredible husband. I'm a good man. And that's it's good for me to say that. And I think that people need to hear other men talking about it, especially with where we're going to take this conversation here in a moment. Right. So I'm thinking about how did I do this? And I exemplified what I say I believe on a day-to-day basis, first in private and then in private with my family and then publicly with other people. And I'm like, that is a huge separation between being a male and being a man, right? Because being a man is like, if I say that I believe something, I'm going to believe it when things are good or bad. I'm going to believe it in private and in public, all the same. Like, I will be consistent throughout my life. That is manly. But I also, Jason, didn't fully agree with that answer either. And so I thought a little bit more about it. And I came to a level where I'm satisfied with this answer that I could give you for your show. I think that the true distinction between being a man, being a male, comes down to the heart of fatherhood, right? And so if I say, Jason, like, tell me 3 things that you think of what it means to be a father. Tell me like 3 things that come to your head.
Oh, right now,
Yeah.
responsibility, number
Okay.
one.
Responsibility to who?
To myself,
Okay.
to my family, to
Yeah.
my God,
Okay.
and community.
Okay.
And in no particular order, but that's 4, but those are the pinnacles or the foundations for me.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So responsibility. What's one more?
No, I'm sorry, I just blanked out. You even got me.
Yeah. Now I got you.
Yeah. It's responsibility, my relationship with myself.
Okay. Okay.
That's like one of the essentials before I can serve anyone or
Mhm.
anything or be loyal or faithful to anything, having faith in oneself. And that's where experience, curiosity build wisdom,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
also builds temperance.
Yeah.
Then it comes family. Um, when you want a family, the one thing that I don't know if you would agree with this, but there are a lot of males who want a family. And then when they get it, they're like, whoa, this is so much. Like, this is the
Mhm.
weight of the world. And
Yes.
if I screw up and I see my kids from when they're little to when they're big, the mark it's like a judgment or scale you don't understand until you're in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I, until you're in it, you really don't get it. But I love the way that you just said that, because that kind of comes to the answer that I think really separates a man from a male, right? Like, a male is willing to exist, and he's willing to strive, and he's willing to work sometimes, right? Like, he can or he cannot be any of those things. But I believe that a true man is 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 the man who is willing to endure any amount of pain in order to have the most severe positive impact on his lineage, right? Like, I've asked so many people, like, what does it mean to be a father? What is important for fatherhood? Bloodline and lineage are the words I never hear anybody say. Like,
I
in our
don't either.
culture, it's something we
I
don't even
don't.
talk
I
about
think of
anymore.
legacy though.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And legacy is probably the closest that we get. But even legacy, like when you think of the word lineage, lineage has to do with the blood, right? It has to do with the blood that is in my veins and the blood that I pass on to somebody else. And blood is metaphorical. Blood is physical. It's tangible. It's ethereal, right? Like, blood has a lot of meaning. I think that a lot of guys are not concerned with their lineage the way that they actually should be, right? And so when I talk about like this pain, I love the way that you just said it. Like, just this last 2 weeks, man, I have found myself almost feeling like I can't breathe because of this life that I've created for my family is so intense, and it demands so much of me. And then it's just like more and more and more and more. And I just have to like feel it. Right. So all of these demands of fatherhood that are being put on me so that I could give my kids what I want to give them and fulfill the promises that I've made to them, it's demanding more of me than I have to give. Right. I am having to give more away and to do more than I know how to do, than I feel like I'm capable of doing, or even that I knew that I might be able to do. And that hurts. Like, that is it's painful. It's stressful. Any dad who says it like fatherhood is like just easy and beautiful is full of crap, right? It actually is extremely difficult. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's righteous. It's glorious. It's fun, but it's freaking hard. And so for me, I believe what truly sets a man apart from just being a male is the one who is willing to endure any amount of pain to have the most severe positive impact on his lineage.
I agree. I agree a lot with that, and I would like to add, because in my personal view, a man's got to own his own experience before he
Mhm.
gets to really be responsible for another, before anyone in even a family. And it's not, and this is what I mean by family. So there's males out there, they want to have a family, but let's just say they physically can't. And
Mhm.
they either add to a relationship and they're adopting a role that maybe was theirs or not theirs, but they're an addition to somebody's family dynamic. And the core identity for a male need to elevate to a man is understanding not just costs, but the temperance in your life.
Mhm.
So, you've got to be able to own your experience. That means whether it's the bullshit or the truth,
Yep.
or it's when I fail to success,
Yeah.
right? And understanding that mindset separates male and men quickly, because
Yeah.
males, when they feel the pressure, they will bounce. They will, "Psh, I'm out. I'm not going to be responsible. They got too much." Like the common things, like when I would hear some of my male friends that are single and say, well, you know, I don't want to deal with all this damage. And I'm like, how do you think they feel? Right? Okay, so one thing I would say is people are not all put together when you get together.
No.
You build each other.
Yeah. And even after you build each other, you're still not going to be put all the way together.
Right. It's a growing process.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
So,
well, I you know, like I think that one thing that I've seen a lot of, right? And especially right now, and this is, I know a lot of guys who they have discipline, they have commitment, they're successful, but not at home. Right? And it's very subtle. And this is where like the manhood dilemma is coupled intimately with the mental health dilemma, which is coupled intimately with the fatherlessness dilemma. Right. And like what so many people don't understand is that children can grow up fatherless while having a father in the home.
That's 100%.
You could have a dad in the home and still not have a dad.
Right.
Right. I mean, like if a man is not emotionally available, if a man is not making himself available, if he's not making himself known, if he is not instructing and teaching, like Theodore Roosevelt, he said that something along the lines of, I don't remember exactly, so I'm going to paraphrase. The man who believes more in this big, beautiful dream that he has, more than he believes in being valuable to his children, does not deserve the freedom that have been given to him.
If he doesn't know the cost, how can he?
Right.
Yeah.
And so
or the fruit.
Like I was saying, I know a lot of guys they have discipline. I know guys that are jacked, like absolutely jacked, and they worked to get it naturally, but who have lost their marriages. You know, and so we can look at the body and we could say, oh, this man has discipline because of his physique. Okay, but at what point are we going to stop pandering and stop coddling the moral failures of men behind closed doors in the home and say, hey, it doesn't matter how much money you've made. Like, look at how many promises you haven't kept to your children. You're failing. Right? Hey, it doesn't matter how jacked you are or what you did in this competition. Your wife has needed this from you and she has made that clear to you and you still have not met her need. Right? Like you are exhausting yourself for work and you're willing to work overtime and you're willing to do extra and you love being known as a guy that's dependable and go to and would do whatever anybody needs except for at home. And then when you're home, you have to have your preference and your rest, and you can't give that same level of attention and passion and dedication to your wife and your kids. You can give it away to the world. You're not being a man. This is not manhood. This is not masculine. You are failing. You know what I mean? Like, we have got to stop doing that. And which is great. Like, and this is where I love, like, where I come from is like, because I talk a lot about depression and the mental health stuff. I'm super empathetic. I'm very compassionate. I fucking love people. But we also have got to stop pretending that going out and doing good and looking good out here and all of these, I can have all of these manly virtues except for at home. And it's acceptable. Right. And it's ridiculous. And because what happens, again, going back to what I was saying about lineage, is like, my kids don't give a crap how dependable I am to my team at work. They don't give a crap. If I come through the door and my son needs something from me and I don't give it to him, I'm failing. I'm failing the number 2 promise in my life, like the number 1 being to my wife first, right? But if I do that to my son, I'm failing the number 2 promise in my life. And I have become the father that I am, and I have had the impact on people that I have had because I live with such a violent scrutiny of myself to say it doesn't matter how much good I did here, or here. I failed my son because I didn't keep my promise to him. I failed my daughter because I didn't keep my promise to her. My wife needed attention from me and I gave it to somebody else first. I failed my family, and I'm willing to feel that pain, and I'm willing to go through that abasement and that humiliation in the home, and I'm willing to own it and to verbalize it on my own volition to my wife and my kids. And I'm willing to talk about it publicly, and I'm willing to fucking do something about it. This is why I beat depression. right? This is why, like, I've come through the horrible place that I came from and I became the person that I am now. And this is why when my children go to places in public and we hang out with people, dads talk to me in private, like, what the hell are you doing to get your children to listen to you like that? Right. And this is why, because of this violent scrutiny that I put on myself, I'm willing to inflict pain upon myself so I could better and more detailed own my shit for my wife and my kids. And then just let that kind of bleed out into the world around me.
That's so very important, because when you look at your wife, like, look, I have amazing partner in life. My lady is, yeah, she has her inadequacies, and so do I. We're, like I said, we're not all put together, and we don't always mesh. Other times we're like just two budding bulls, just like knocking heads. And the thing is, no matter what happens each day, I don't go to bed angry, because I know whatever is left on the table that where we disagreed with, we've got to come to a working agreement that where we're in flow with each other, because those kids out there, they're not equipped for the mindless mentors that are in these things. I forget, I was watching a podcast and a guy said, he says, hey, it's not social media that I'm afraid of. It's the billions of teachers of false provocations and identity that take people away from who they are and who they can become. So having a partner, your relationship with yourself is the most important, because from there you lead to the relationship with your partner, and she's the one to give you that counsel. Every great king in the world that ever had a successful legacy, Key, always had a woman as consort, as someone who gives counsel to the emotional side, that where, I mean, what do you do? Like, for example, I was a latchkey kid. My mom was like, hey, your mommy's little man now. And no woman ever realizes how dangerous those words are, because they never realize, well, you're telling a little boy to become a man. What's a man? She can't explain it, but yet has the beginning expectations, and they don't realize what they do this. And single moms out there, I love you all. Thank you for your service. You've gone to wars and battles long before I ever stepped foot on the battleground. Thank you for your patience and your love. And even where you're not, you may not be where you want to be, but thank you for your dedication. Thank you for giving us life. I will say that to moms. But when it comes to, I mean, did anyone teach you how to become a man? Or that was one you had to go learn on your own?
Yeah, I mean, there was, like, later in life, I got connected with some people at the church, but then there was still so much I had to, like, learn on my own, man. Especially when it came to the torment and the internal anguish that I was going through. And that's, like, the people who I had around me loved me and they would have done anything for me. They did not know what I was going through. They did not know how to help me. And that's part of, that's part of being a forerunner. That's part of being a pathfinder, is that certain people are picked by hand to go ahead and to find the trail and to make that trail smooth so that other people can walk on it. Right. Like, when it came to this kind of stuff, that's just how it was. So I had to learn a lot on my own. But as far as being a man goes, yeah, I didn't have, like, being a dad in the home. Like, how do you handle this emotion when you're exhausted and your kids need that from you, or they're behaving this way, or your wife says that kind of thing in that tone, right? Like, nobody showed me how to do that. Right? I didn't freaking know.
Or how to attend to their needs, right?
Right. Yeah. And I failed tremendously. I would just like to say I was the worst kind of person that I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, it's interesting, because when I ask guys that and I say, hey, who showed you how to be a man? And there's always a pause. They're going back in their memory bank and they're just like, dude, I may have had a dad, but he wasn't training me. I have been blessed to have male mentors and my friends' dads who were solid. My best friend, Gareth Roberts, Mel, was a second dad to me. And he was like a good Christian. The guy was like the super nerd of nerds. But you know what he did do? Every time I came over to my best friend's house, hey, you want to play with Gareth? Time to go do work in the yard with him. And I was like, damn it, why do I have to do this? This is me going back as a kid. And Mel would be like, all right, Gareth, did you pick up the dog poop in the yard? Okay, done that. Okay, great. Did you sweep up the garage, pick up things? And we're doing work and we're laughing with each other. But I never realized the lessons he was given. Hey, priorities first, take care of the home.
Yeah.
He'll take care of you. And
That's
because of
legit.
that,
That's
it
legit.
set me on a pathway of like, you know what? Aha, there's the mentor. So we never realize who trains us. And then there's the self-taught part of being a man.
Yeah.
And that goes into one of the questions I have for you about mindset. How important is it to have growth mindset and discipline, to being a man and a father?
I mean, we all know, man, like every single one of us knows, right? This is where a lot of people's shame and their guilt comes from what they're doing inside their head. Ooh. Not necessarily even what they're doing in their own life. You know what I mean? Most people's fears have nothing to do with what has happened in their life or is happening in their life. It has to do with what's going on up here. I mean, when it comes to being a man and it comes to being a father, like the mindset is everything. Man, the mindset's everything. And because because the mind is where I'm truly conscious, right? The mind is where my will rests. Like that's where my will exists. My ability to choose, my ability to reason, my ability to think, right? To decide. It's in my mind. And so if I'm not having like a growth mindset, if I'm not having a sharpened mind or anything like that, like I am handing my willpower over to chance and to circumstance. And chance and circumstance, they are vengeful, they are fickle, they are treacherous. Yeah, I mean, my mindset's everything. The way that I think, how I think, even the way that I think about what I think is crucial.
Do you have to train it?
Yeah, 100%. You have to train it. Yeah, you have to train it. And this is the best part, right? So there's so many guys that I've worked with, where I was personally for a while with the dads and even some of the females that I've helped. This, like, I don't know how to think through this. And like, we all understand, like we have a choice and then like the pressure comes on and we go through something hard. And it's like, we forget, like I forget, like even when I'm feeling so discouraged, I'm feeling so overwhelmed and I am convinced of this thing that I don't want to be true, but it feels like it is, I can still actually choose. The only thing that will happen is what I choose to happen. I got sidetracked on a tangent. Sorry. Can you ask your question again?
So is it important to train growth mindset?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Debrief.
No, that's the one thing about my show is, hey, you may have a pause, but I allow this. See, this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is what a man in a making does. When we have to slow down and let me go right back before I lose where I'm at. This is live in the moment. This is ownership of your presence. Mm-hmm. And men out there or guys, let me tell you, brother to brother, you got to be that way with each other. Not expecting like, hey, man, just rub some dirt on it and you'll be okay. No, it ain't going to be like that. You don't. And I think this is the biggest point is that I want to add is that we don't always have it figured out, but we will find a way.
Yeah. And we can. We can find a way. That's the best part. I can find a way. And it can be trained. Like for me, I teach everybody debriefs. Like a debrief. Like the willingness and the intention to sit down and to bring back into mind and into focus what happened and what I felt, or what I felt and what I didn't do or should have done, or whatever it is. And then to think through it in a way of like just scrutinizing it. Like, okay, I felt discouraged. And because I was discouraged, I doubted myself. And because I doubted myself, I didn't do this thing. And because I didn't do this thing, I missed the opportunity, which made me feel hopeless, right? Just the ability to sit the fuck down and shut up and just think about what happened, right? Because what happens is I'm forcing my mind to hold on to all of these little if then, like this, that sequences. And when I'm doing that, I'm also at the same time, I'm going to remember the emotion of those things, right? So this ability to kind of go back and to play over in my mind, like things that have happened. And then especially to add to it, like the way that I would have wanted something to be, is like, it can be trained. This is how we train our minds, is by sitting down and going back through and rethinking. And then even instilling into thoughts and into memories the outcome that I would have preferred.
Ooh, that's a big one right there. So when you said this, I think that you have to have structure to lay this out for any man. And one thing I noticed in your social media posts on your Instagram, you posted a picture of you writing in a journal. And you know what? I think every man and woman, to be able to be honest, exactly, to be honest with yourself, because this thing, I don't offer criticism, I offer critiques. And this is the one thing that you got to know the difference between a criticism and a critique. A critique is just laying the situation out. I'm going to be honest with myself, because you can't lie to yourself. You can't. If you think you are, you're not going to escape the truth. You're going to be wondering, well, why does this always happen to me?
Right.
Why does this? I've done all the work. I did the exercise. I did the diet. I've been attentive in my marriage. I've been attentive to my kids. Why is it not all coming together? Because if you never identify with the real story, when you write in a journal, if you don't mind me sharing, what is the essential parts in that training for mindset that you use in your journal to give you that reminders, fuel? What is it? Why is it so important to even journal for you, so to speak?
A long time ago, I've got this line on my shirt. I've actually got it tattooed on my hand as well. It's the logo for what I do. The lion is this is like my everything. There's a guy, his name was Benaiah. He was one of David's mighty men, King David in the Bible. He had a select group of people in his little army that were his top. This gentleman, Benaiah, went on to become Solomon's right-hand man, basically the head of Solomon's bodyguard. When Solomon became king after David died, this man, Benaiah, went out and like enacted or exacted revenge on multiple people, like killed them to protect the throne. And he was part of like what allowed Solomon to have such a powerful transition into kingship. But the first instance of this man, Benaiah, in scripture was that he chased a lion into a pit on a snowy day. Chased a lion into a pit on a snowy day. So not only did he didn't get attacked by a lion, he chased a lion. Okay. He didn't just chase a lion into the forest. He chased a lion until it was cornered in a cave where he also was cornered. And he did it in the snow, which if you've ever done any sort of physical activity outside when it's freaking cold, it sucks. Right. And I remember thinking this was in about, I think 2006 or something. There was some book that came out that was titled A Lion in a Pit on a Snowy Day. And I read the story of this guy and I was like, that is exactly how I need to think about my mental health. That is exactly how I need to think about everything that's happening in my life. And that was a pivotal moment for me, was just this idea that I could hunt this stuff down, which led to this kind of like this imagining that, I mean, everything that goes on, Jason, like our hearts and our minds, they're like a wilderness, right? It is like a frontier that is not tamed. And there is like beautiful potential, but there's also treacherous enemies that are inhabiting this land. And if I want to make this land thrive, I have to hunt down those enemies and I need to slay them so they don't disrupt the growth that can happen. And I need to tap into these places that are fertile for growth. And I need to like nurture them and take care of them. And so for me, journaling, I know this is kind of like a little bit of a roundabout answer, but journaling for me was that. Journaling for me was I can go and face what is going on inside of me and fight it. Journaling for me was I could focus on the fertile, the goodness, the things that were growing and pour more into them. Journaling just helped me to do that. And then I just realized when I don't journal, I feel way worse. Like I struggle a bit more when I'm not journaling.
Is it that
like,
accountability?
Then.
Is it an accountability thing where it's kind of like, if I don't journal and I don't put this in paper, it could be the lines of what reality did happen could be grayed very easily. Could it? I mean, by not documenting part of that, whatever day that moment, maybe, let's say if you got into a bad argument with your wife, right? Yeah. And it was like something like you knew in the moment that it may have been convictionally right, but one of your greatest assets is your wife who's in this company with you. That's why when you get married, your marriage is a business. Believe it or not, it's a spiritual business. It's a physical business. It's a fiscal business. And when you understand that, why would you want to hurt one of your investors and board members with being blinded just with your own vision? And that's one of the things that I feel that, the honesty is the scale that measures you all. It doesn't matter. Like you may have been right, but if you were dishonest in being right, then you've accomplished nothing. Yeah. And I think a lot of guys out there are struggling, just like you said, like, how does a lot of guys do all the things on paper, but if you can't connect to your wife, you can't even be honest with her, or can't even, like, do you realize how much they need attentiveness? Like, imagine, like, there are parents who can be a mom all day, 24/7, not have to go to a job, which is it's a greater sacrifice than going and becoming a CEO of a bigger company. It really is, because see, people come and go in a company and they get fired or they quit. When your kids quit on you, or when your family's not there to like give you the pep up, the fuel, the reward of like, my presence is making an impact. When you see your kids grow with a milestone. I think I watched one of your YouTubes and you were talking about 75 hard. And what I was intrigued about was, how that you translate 75 hard, which another interview that I've had on this show, Greg Birch, he does 75 hard. I didn't know about 75 hard until about 2 months ago. And that's interesting, but do you involve your kids in 75 hard? Mm-hmm. And how are they in their behavior with, just even having that physical factor to their lives?
Man, Jason, that I love that you asked that question. You know who John Eldridge is?
I'm very familiar with John Eldridge. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's okay if you need a reference moment.
Oh yeah. Wild at Heart. I was like, I can't remember the name of his first book, right. Wild at Heart. And Wild at Heart, he's talking about when Jesus said like to turn the other cheek, right? Which is like to not fight back. Like peaceful resistance, basically non-combative resistance. John Eldridge says that Jesus was not talking to children. Like, boys need to know how to fight. And that's actually what meekness is. And that whole thing became popularized through Jordan Peterson. But meekness being that, like, I am capable of violence and I'm just going to choose to not be violent right now. Right? That's meekness. And that's what Jesus was talking about with turning the other cheek. John Eldridge has said that, like, young boys need to know that they could crush somebody if they had to. Like, they should. Right? And so for me, for my kids, I have them do really, really intense things. And as we're running, like, we'll be running through our neighborhood, Jason, and we'll do little cadences. And I'm like, who else is out here? Nobody. Like, they will echo it back. Right. And there'll be like overweight dudes hobbling out with their trash can, like, to the sidewalk. And there's like a little 10-year-old running down the street talking about how, like, we are not the same. You are not like me. I am not like you. And for them, like, it's cool because through how much we've loved them and how much we've poured into them and how affectionate we've been, they have compassion. Both my kids are very compassionate. They're very reasonable children, and they both care so much to just do the right thing. But at the same time, like my son, he is not afraid to say that somebody's being a pussy, right? He's not afraid to say like, hey, like you didn't try hard enough and I'm not going to feel bad for you for that. Right. Like, and it's great. And so, yeah, having my daughter do 75 hard and my kids do these intense physical challenges, they go with me. They do stuff with grown men and they will outperform grown men. And, you know, it's amazing because especially for the young boys, like this whole question in our heart, like, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? Am I capable? Like I've shown my kids since day one, like, yeah, you are. And let me point out every single other person around you who is not capable so that you don't forget who you are. And it's very, like, it could seem like very egotistical, but it's not. Like, going back to lineage, I came up with so much shame, man. So much shame. Like, I battle this stuff. Like, even in my journal, it's funny you were talking about it. Like just from the other day, I have in here, like, I'm failing at this, and this level. Like, I'm terrified. Like, I'm scared of like letting my family down. It's something I still go through. Because I go through it, I believe that I have the responsibility to become the kind of man who will not pass that on to my children. Right. So that means like whatever I've got to do in private and whatever I have to do with them and teach them to make it stop is what needs to happen. And so I know this is a bit of a lengthy answer to your question, but the 75 hard stuff and the physical challenges, man, it's mind boggling seeing the effect that it has on them. Because even now, like the other day, I'm like, hey, we're going to go for a 1.5 mile run and do a buttload of burpees. And they're like, okay. And they just put on their shoes. They don't argue with me. They know this is what Wanbergs do. They know that I'm supposed to be strong. The stronger I am, the more I can help people. Like, they have heard it so much and they have seen me do it. They've seen me do it. That they're just like, yeah, this is what we do. This is who we are. And then they just go out and do it.
I think that's a
crazy.
beautiful
It's
thing.
so wild. And I don't know, like, I've never been around a dad that was like me. And so I'm sure from the outside, it probably looks a lot different. But for us, this is just how we live. Like, this is just our life.
Well, I think that's beautiful for many reasons, because one of the things that males versus men are action, males are options. Options, when to do, why should I do this, what's in it for me. And men, in my opinion, know that actions get things done for resolve, for success, for fulfillment, being satisfied. And these things are taught not to happen. We are literally, in my opinion, taught not to be satisfied with anything. It's not good enough. Well, once you reach a success, that doesn't mean that you don't level up. You don't, it's like, as you skill up in your maturity, you definitely, you've reached a milestone marker, a stepping point, and then you go forward with the next thing. It doesn't stop. Life doesn't stop just because you've satisfied one mark. It's the next mark that comes after. And physicality, like the one that's killing people, I don't know. This is where people are saying they have ADHD, ADD. They're creating micro identities before they've even been tested or even know. And I'm like, oh, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Before you let me out. And I kind of like what you said about your kids saying, I'm not going to feel sorry for you because you didn't put in the work. You didn't put in the work. And when people, matter of fact, starting today, hashtag daily walk 30. It's not a challenge. It's just an opportunity. And I'm posting this on my social media, and it's like every single day I will walk for 30 minutes. This is for people who are not active or who've been saying, I need to work out, I need to get to the gym, I need to do this. And they're suffering so bad. And the word rumination, that means they're training their mental bullshit to go over.
Yeah. 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 There's one thought I want to have. And if you're cool with going on a tangent, I would like to
go right ahead, man. This is a show man to man. So
yeah, a while ago you had talked about like how guys were lacking, like nobody showed them They didn't have a man guiding them. They didn't have a father to raise them in a thing, right? So then they're like, I don't know what to do. So then they're self-taught. Like we had to figure this out on our own. I think the next step to that, like you just talked about how like there's always this constant leveling up. The next step for manhood, like we go from having options to, you know what, I'm going to freaking decide. I'm not going to like consider the kind of man that I will be or what might happen in the future or how I feel. I'm going to choose right fucking now. This is the kind of man that I will be. And nothing else is agreeable. Right? I'm not, everything else is a lie. Like this is the kind of man that I will be and everything else is a lie. That's great unless we don't instill that in somebody else. And I think that is where like you level up into this, like you're like the student and then you're the graduate and now you have to become the teacher.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah. Like because instilling it, like because it's hard enough, right? It's hard enough. It's so hard to try to go through life. Like, man, I don't know. I don't know how to be a freaking dad. When my son was a baby, I talk about this in my book, so I don't, and it'll be a long conversation. I'll say this quickly. For the first 6 months of his life, I didn't bond with him. I rejected him. I would change his diaper and I would feed him, and that was it. He was a chore to me because, Jason, I was so afraid. I didn't know how to be a man. Nobody even showed me how to really be a son. How was I supposed to raise a man?
It goes back to that saying. Remember, I was telling you about how like your mommy's little man.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that is hard enough, right? And I'm not the only guy. This is why I love, like, I'm not afraid to just be open and tell guys all of this crap that I've been through and how I felt, because so many guys are like, oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. I thought that I was the only one. It's hard enough to go through, like, I didn't have a dad growing up. And then now I have a son and I'm supposed to raise him. And if I'm honest with myself, that pain is so intense, right? If I'm going to let that pain in and I'm going to feel that I have no idea what I'm doing or how to do it, that's an intense pain. But then to do something about it, like, well, okay, like I can't, like, this is my son. I will not fail him. What do I have to change? Who do I have to become so I can break this? That's hard, right? So it's like this, like difficulty. And then we get to the point, not only where like what I went through of like the kind of man I had to be to bond with my son and what I had to change and what I had to go through in order to heal and to develop into the man who could intimately connect with his son. And then now the true test now isn't, did I become the man that could love his son? The true test now is, how do I teach this to my son? How do I raise my son to carry this knowingly, full fucking knowledge, eyes wide open? He knows, like, my children know where I came from. They know what I've gone through. They know what I've done. They know. And they know why they have to live a certain way, because if they don't, Jason, like everything that you went through, brother, if you don't pass it on to your kids, it was for nothing.
And
everything I went through would be for nothing if I don't teach it to my children and have them
they don't
carry it
realize
on.
what they're teaching when they're not. It's interesting that you just said that, because how many times do you feel your kids are watching you even when you don't feel like you're in a teaching moment, and whether it's a good or bad, you're still teaching. And that right there, I think so many parents are oblivious. Like they're like when I get in a fight with my lady, and my 6-year-old's right there, I've had this happen more than once.
Yep,
My
same.
daughter would be like, stop. She knows this vibration, this action is wrong. And even though you're mad at each other, doesn't matter, because they know it's wrong. A 6-year-old could do that to you. A 5-year-old could do that to you, and they know it's wrong. So it's your duty as a man to recognize my walk is even without words in teaching. And there's that, I don't know if you watched that series, Dragon, the Bruce Lee story on HBO Max. There was a phrase where this guy from China, basically, he moves to San Francisco. He gets involved with gangs somehow. but something in when he wants to leave the gang and he wants to live a fruitful life for himself and not, it's like, say, screw all this bad living. I'm not out to hurt anybody. I'm out here to fulfill a life of freedom, to have a family, to have love, to have an experience. He said something so profound and he goes, when the teacher opened the doors, the student walked through, which is different from when people most likely say, hey, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. No, I like the other way around. I like it. Hey, when the teacher opened the doors, they walk through. And how that relates is that your kids are walking
Mm,
through every day, night or day. It don't matter, even when you're not around, to
yeah.
knowing the right thing and the wrong thing. And this is where the spiritual relationship, we mentor their spirituality.
Yeah.
They are they are a blank slate, and then
Yeah.
they gain the experience.
And
So,
yeah, and not a blank slate of what we do and say, not a blank
mhm,
slate of what we tell them to do, right? They are a blank slate of what I do in private, right? Like this, there's like this, I don't know, like I I've had to appreciate, I think, more and more, maybe that I'm just a little bit different than people. But Jason, I have had such a haunting burden on my shoulders, man, where I'm like, oof. Like I wipe the pee off on the toilet seat in my house. Because if I think like it's okay for my wife to sit on a dirty toilet and my daughter to sit on a dirty toilet, like what other filth am I letting in the home? Like this is how I think, right? Like, and so of course I've raised my son to also do that too. He gets in trouble if he doesn't. But people just they think that they can do whatever they want in private and it doesn't translate over, but it's actually it's because what I do in private behind closed doors when it's just me, whether it's up here or physically I'm the only one in the room, is it's who I become. And I can only give away what I have. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what I do. It
right,
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how I dress. It doesn't matter what books I read. It doesn't matter the people that I hang out with. It doesn't matter what kind of music I listen to or the podcasts that I listen to. It doesn't matter how I articulate or present myself or enunciate. It doesn't matter what I can quote or how educated I am. It's how am I living in private? And that, again, going back to the journaling thing we talked about earlier, taking accountability for myself and sorting through this mess in private is going to help me do it like for real in other
well, what
places.
you do in private, you're gonna do in public. You don't even
Yep.
realize it. You're
Yeah.
gonna do in public just because, like, say, like, if I'm nice to my wife, if I'm nice to my lady, and I'm a dick to everybody else, let's just say that. I remember one time my lady, she called me out for it big time. She's all, "Why were you so rude to a waiter? Are you gonna treat me like that?" And this is in the beginning of our relationship. And she's all, there's a thing in the Mexican culture, they say that, how you treat your mother is how you're gonna treat your wife. And I've had a very strained relationship between me and my mother at times. I mean, we've butted heads and, you know, but when she said it to me, and I've heard it before, but when she said it to me, because I'm not gonna lie, my lady's the most beautiful woman. We've been 9 years together, going on 10. We have been through fire, brimstone, heat, snow, whatever you wanna call. I'm talking grit. That's what makes a marriage. That's what makes a man.
Yeah.
Grit. Because it it's not the moments that it's easiest does it serve you. It serves you in the difficulty to see your way through. And let me tell you, when your woman sees you through your worst stuff, your worst dish out to how you treat somebody else, and then she goes and says, "Are you going to treat me that way?" Because we see, if you catch it and you realize it, you're like, that is the greatest asset, because that's the person, what we do call culturally, ride or die. They don't lie about it. They have that beautiful little thing called woman's intuition. It's like the Jedi master trick, like, oh, so you think you have this figured out, big boy. All right, I got you. I'll let you run with it and let you hang yourself. And then you're like, oh fuck, damn, damn. But and that's where the spirituality comes in the mix, knowing thyself to be true.
Yeah.
Because when you look in your picture in the background to your t-shirt and even on your hand, in order for a man to strike a saber, a spear through the throat, he has to have trust. He has to have confidence, even though he wasn't necessarily ready for that moment. He has to say, there's no going back. I'm going to strike. I'm going to go here. And there ain't no abandoning that. And if you feel it, it's not until after the moments do you actually, this is where empathy really plays in, because I respect the animal. Because a lot of times the animal out there is the animal in you, the savage. The savage. And Jordan Peterson talks about this. I don't know if you've ever heard that. He was interviewed by Joe Rogan. He's a man has to be a gentleman and a savage all in one. And how do you it's like there's these things where it's like my tongue, a man's tongue. You ever notice this with your kids? When you say something opposed to your wife, the tone of your voice literally changes the way that the kids see. There is a difference.
Mhm.
They're like, yo, I just done messed up my dad. And it's like you get that real small feeling like, all right.
Mm.
But then here's the empathy, the love that comes like, look, I know you made this and you didn't really think this through, or you thought, but I love you. I know we can do better.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? I mean, when your kids make a mistake, do you go hard at them, or do you say, let's just sit down and be rational about this?
Yeah. I mean, like, to be honest with you, like one of my struggles, one of the things that I'm currently working on right now is like less is more, right? So sometimes, like even the other day, like I was talking with my son about something, or no, I was talking with my daughter. It was my daughter. And I was like, okay, like it doesn't seem like you're listening. And she's like, well, Dad, you just keep saying the same thing over and over again. I'm trying to process it, but you're not really giving me the time to like really like work on what you're telling me to do. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, my bad. Right.
That's
like
a teaching moment to you, right? Because they teach us.
Huge. Yeah. And that's, it like, man, for my kids, I've cultivated an environment where, like if I'm calling them out on something, or like it's heated, or there's like a mess in the family or whatever, like I make them tell me what frustration they have. I'm like, because I was so scared of speaking my mind. I was so scared. Like, and then the times that I did it, it would blow up in my face and I would get hurt. Like bad things would happen. And I don't want that for them. I want them to grow up knowing like there's a line here and you will not cross it. And if you do, I'm going to let you know. And so even for them, like I make my daughter like, hey, how are you feeling about me right now? Like I'm upset with you. Like, okay, why are you upset with me? Or she's like, I'm scared of you. Okay, why are you scared of me? I'm like, then sweetheart, please tell me that. Like just plainly, just please tell me. So she can kind of get used to and develop this like, I even have the right to defend myself, even if my dad's being a dick, right? Like I don't have to just like let my dad.
Isn't that stuff down shame that we all talk about?
Oh my gosh.
It's like that silent monster that eats them up. And because when they need help, let's face it, I'm a dad of daughters. When they need help and security and safety, the one biggest thing I think between men and women is the level of communication. And if you can't be honest with it in the way that it is, then you're wasting your freaking time.
Yeah. And like I talk about it in the book, but like getting good at turning apologizing into a freaking skill. It couples with, I talked about being violently like scrutinizing of myself and like owning myself, like aggressively. Also the apologizing, telling my children, like, okay, I couple apologizing with an acknowledgement, with a request for forgiveness and change. If it's not all three of those things, it is not an apology, right? Like sorry is not an apology. Saying sorry and asking for forgiveness is not an apology. When I acknowledge what I did wrong and I ask them, I humble myself, please forgive me, right? I put the power in their court and then I make the change. Now I've apologized. Now I've made things right.
So you won't do it again.
Right. Yeah. And so this is for me, fortunately, the one thing that I've had going well for me over the years, Jason, is like when I tell my wife or my kids, I'm done. It's over. When I tell them, okay, that's going to stop, it stops. And it's just because I'm going to make the promise, and however much work I got to do, I'm going to do it. And even so, over 9/11, I did one full Murph every 4 hours for 40 hours.
Whoa.
So, do you know what a Murph is?
I used to do CrossFit. So yeah.
Okay. So I did
not fun.
No, Murph's the best though. Murph's the best. Murph's the gut check. But I did one every 4 hours for 40 hours. It was 10 full Murphs, and I was on my 6th Murph. And my daughter wanted to run with me, so she's out running with me. And she's arguing with my brother, and she had been snippy for a few days. And I'm like, we're on the run, right? And this is like the family culture we have. We're like, we are going to protect this at all costs. She's snippy. She starts being rude to me. She's being rude to my son. And I'm like, baby, like what? Like you've been like this for a few days. You normally get like this when you're upset about something, but you're not talking about it. What's going on? And she stops running and she says, Dad, I've needed you a lot lately, and you've been so busy with work. You keep telling me later.
Whoa.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Ooh. Oh my gosh. So my daughter was stressed out and getting agitated because she needed something from me, and I was just not listening to her. I was too busy with other things, and she carried that agitation into everything else in her life, which, by the way, this is not my kid. This is all people. But, we created the kind of environment where I worked a full day, and I had done, at this point, I had already run 12 miles with a weight vest and done 600 pull-ups and 1,200 push-ups and 1,800 squats. I'd been up for more than 24 hours, and I was still willing to stop and shut the fuck up and listen to my kid. And when she said, you have not been listening to me, you've not been there, you keep telling me later. And I was like, okay, like I acknowledge it. And then it changed, And so, and this is, for me, like I believe 100%, man, like anybody listening to this is struggling with mental health. Look, you guys, therapy and medication is not the full truth. It's not the full answer. And if your route for your mental health is just to go through therapy or to have some experience or to get on some medication, you're lost. Like you're escaping the pain and you are forfeiting some growth that somebody else is going to need from you. Like you are going to rob yourself and rob somebody else of goodness that you will not attain because you are avoiding the process. Okay. Now I'm not saying don't ever go through therapy or meds. I'm just saying if that's all that it is. I truly believe, though, the only true cure for fathers battling depression is to get so damn good at being a father that they admire that the darkness just melts away. For the dads that I've worked with, when they get to the point, one of my dads, his daughter was 10 years old, and she had never, Jason, on her own volition, not once in her life, come up and said, Daddy, I love you. Ooh. Because of how tumultuous the home was.
Ooh.
And he got to the point where he was winning her heart and winning her heart and winning her heart. And she's like, Daddy, I love you, for the first time. You know how hard it's going to be for that man to doubt himself because of that? Because he kept doing the things that he admired. He kept working on being a man that he respected. And he saw the impact that it had on the family around him. And then, like, where's the darkness going to stick? And this is the true path. Like, men need to be legacy-minded leaders. I need to be living in private and living day to day in public and otherwise in such a way that my grandchildren's lives are going to be better for what I'm doing right now. Right now. And if I'm not approaching life that way, I'm in grave danger of like missing something important or taking something away from somebody else. And more than that, not only can I provide something incredible for somebody else, not only can I take all of these stupid family cycles that have been going on and break their back over my knee, not only do I have the power to do that, I also have the power to really, truly feel what I'm worth, really, truly become a man that I love, and to be able to be like, I can't believe how long I believed I was a piece of shit for her because it was so not true. It was so not true. Look at my life now. Look at who I've become. It wasn't true. I believed it, and it was so dumb that I did, but it wasn't true. because look at me now. Right. And
And
that's something that therapy alone cannot ever give to somebody. That's something that medication, for the most part, cannot give to anybody. Right. This is why, like, you really, man. Listen, dads, your life is worth living.
it is, you know what? And I'll tell you what, my own experience right now, I've been through a couple years where my 16-year-old, as an example, every single day for the first year I was there. And then when me and her mom split up, every single weekend without fail. I even went through 2 surgeries in those 14 years, those first 14 years. Never missed. I never quit. I never stopped. And even when I was failing. See, remember something about failure. Failure is for you, not against you. Failure, when you fail to meet the mark or you fail in success, it's those moments when your daughters or your sons, they meet you on the emotional level beyond discipline. It's like when my daughters hug me and say, "I love you, daddy," you can watch this strong ass man poof go right down. And I can't tell you how many moments, like I'm watching my daughter go through her dance rehearsal. And my daughter's in lead spot on the stage, right? And me and my lady just had a little bit of a falling out before. And it just watching the courage for a 6-year-old autistic girl to stand up in lead spot on the stage, lights on, and she's focused. She's not looking at me or mom because we're watching. And she's going. And then as soon as she got done, she went and hugged mom. And then, we had our moments. But when they hug you and say, "I love you," and this is why it's so important for people, you know what? Dads out there, hug your daughters.
Yeah.
The more that you hug them and tell them and try to understand, just like you said, "Hey, dad wants to know. We want to know." We can't be unapproachable. That's the approach and reproach are so big. And with kids, there's no line about that. Because you'll know when they are rejecting you, you will know, like, why aren't you interested? They'll stay quiet. Like, you're so scared, I can't tell you. And when your kids can't have a dialogue with you, honestly, then all those things that you make up, the monuments, the achievements don't mean shit. Because like you said, if I can't do it in the home, how do I expect to do it out in public? You know?
Yeah.
So it's getting to the top of the hour, man. I definitely want to invite you back for probably an episode 2 and of Man to Man Voices and Stories. And I also want to send out an invitation to you. Going forward, as the brand is developing, I'm going to have table talks, and I will definitely send you an invite for, a group of guys getting together, and we will approach, because that's what, guys, fellas, you need a tribe. We're so individualized. We need to be a parts of tribes of healthy mindsets and growth. And
Yes.
Greg, you are definitely one of the probably the first people I'll be calling, because it's that grit, the discipline, and the trust and belief that I see, that even this interview is just mind blowing. And that I see it's represented in your character, and that lives long after the interview. So, it on the stage right now in YouTube, you can go to Greg's website to find out. You got coaching, you got a book coming out. What's the title
Yes.
of your book again?
In Need of Heroes.
And you have a YouTube station. Isn't it called Fate, I believe?
Yeah, I did From Ashes to Embers was the podcast brand for a while. I'm going to rebrand everything to just Greg Wanberg. Yeah, I'm just going to rebrand it. Like it's my story and the impact and my experiences and my mission. Like, it should just be my name, And so I'm going to rebrand everything. But I have, with work, has picked up, and other homeschool stuff and family stuff, and the book has been so incredible lately, but it's taken so much time. And so the YouTube channel and the podcast
Maybe,
have
you know
been
what? This is
way on the
something
back
I
burner.
went through, and this is a suggestion. I'm working with a great designer, Brandon Wilson, and one thing he said, he's like, you can have your podcast. Like, I'm doing man-to-man voices and stories. I'm doing sound off, tune in, and my Stoic Circus. But Jason Barajas, I've stopped going by 72 the Architect. It's still there, but maybe in your thought process, suggestion is like, still keep it there because it's just a branch. You're the tree. And
Yeah.
you got different fruits, and maybe that might work out for you. You know, I think that's something that, you know, and ladies and gentlemen, go if you want to find him on IG. You're on IG, YouTube. Like I said, there's the website www.Greg Wanberg WANBERG.com. You can find him there. And thank you so much for being a part. I know you just got, like you said, you got off shift. And I want you to be able to enjoy your family today, enjoy the highlights, all that great stuff. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the show here in just a moment, but just stay on. I'm going to mute you up and then just give my final takeaways. So thank you so much, Greg. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. Listen, you guys, you get one shot. You know, and no matter what happened to you, no matter who said what to you, no matter who took what from you, no matter who wasn't there for you, no matter how hard it's been or how hopeless or lost you have felt, you still have a choice. And all of that can be turned on its head right now, but you cannot do it alone. You can't, which is why I coach. This is why Jason does what Jason does. This is why one of my friends, John Gardina, this is why Dominic does what he does. This is why Steve Eckert does what Steve Eckert does. Like all of these people that I know, this is why we do what we do, because we are trying to change the tide. Brother, nothing gets to define you aside from you. So be careful with the choices that you make. That's it.
All right. Well, we'll definitely look
Thank you,
forward to
brother.
having you on again, my friend. So just bear with me just a moment as I give. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for watching this YouTube live stream on X and YouTube. And this talk is also available on Clubhouse. Like I said, you can get a hold of Greg if you like. I would strongly suggest be on the lookout for his book coming up. And, you know, stay tuned. I will have more man-to-man voices and stories, and we will have more guests just like Greg. So thank you all. We'll see you all next time on Man to Man Voices and Stories.